All right, so thank you guys for attending today. So the idea is this is just for our debate teachers to kind of, I guess, give a bit more training and guidance and also address some feedback that we've gotten as well so that we can try to make these classes as successful as possible. But I want to open up first of all before I say anything, because I know lots of people had feedback in the group chat. So I wanted to ask you guys your feedback, thoughts, opinions on how these debate classes are going so far. So whoever wants to go first.
I guess I
Well,
can go
go
first.
ahead.
Okay. No,
I knew that
go
was gonna
ahead.
happen.
Go
Like
ahead.
right at the same time.
I
No,
knew
you
it was
go
gonna
ahead. You
happen.
first.
Okay, awesome. Well, my debate class went pretty well. The only major difficulty I had was just the gap in levels. I had two students who were very beginner, where they couldn't really even formulate full sentences. And then I had two kids who were super advanced, where they were like almost fluent level. So I think it was kind of hard because some of the kids I feel like were not getting challenged enough and were kind
Right.
of bored. And then the other two wouldn't really understand what was going on. And then I would have to help them a lot. So it was, I think for me, that was the hardest difficulty, and what kind of made the class, like the balance a little off, was just the levels and the differences in the levels. But other than that, I think like I had no discipline issues. Everyone was super well behaved and participated really well. It was just the levels that made it a little bit difficult.
Okay. All right, that's good to know. Excellent. Thanks, Taylor. Okay. Valentine.
I completely agree. So I've had a couple different debate classes, and like you said, the gaps sometimes. Sorry, my voice. The gaps in the levels. Excuse me. That's difficult. And then another thing that I notice is that the kids do not come prepared. So I know that there is one whole class for preparation, and I give them like a complete task in the breakout room. Here's the amount of facts that I want. I have to be really specific or they don't do it. And then I have to say, okay, I want you to leave today with your question. But then, even so, the next time, I'm not always hearing like what I think they found. And then, like, some of them don't do any more research. So for 2 minutes, they don't even, they speak 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I try to prompt it out of them. Oh, tell me more. Oh, do this, but it's difficult because
Yeah.
that's where I struggle.
Okay. But both good bits of feedback, actually. And we are working to address both of those things as well. So it's really good to hear that from you guys. So actually that leads me nicely into the first thing I'll share with you guys. That was a good segue. It's like we planned it that way or something. All right, so I'm going to share with you guys a couple of things. So what we're going to start doing to kind of address at least the expectations side of things is have actually put this document together, and it's gone to Jack, and it will be going to the director of the school to be shared with students and parents. Some expectations around these classes, because these weren't really set early on, because this all happened very, very quickly. As you guys noticed, we kind of went from me teaching 2 debate classes to all the teachers teaching I think there's something like 20 or 30 debate classes for this school. So it blew up really quickly because of the partnership. So this will be going to the director, and this is what we're going to be sharing with students. So this is based off of some of the discipline issues that I've gotten feedback on, as well as also the preparedness issue as well. I mean, we can't go home with the students and force them to prepare as much as we'd like to. But we are going to try to make it clear that students have to do something for this class. And it's making it particularly tricky as well, because we're getting feedback from parents that they're not finding it as difficult as it could be, which is kind of a double-edged sword, right? They're not finding it difficult, but the students aren't preparing, so it's a bit hard. So we're trying to address both things in this document and in the training together. So I can share this with you guys afterwards, but if there's anything else you guys think needs to be added to this document, please feel free to let me know. But
The
I've
camera on is fabulous.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I put this one in there specifically for this. I know I do the Century Bridge debate classes, so I have like Century Bridge kids and not the cram school kids. But some of mine will keep their camera off, and I've kind of learned to adjust to it because they'll still participate, and I know they will. And if they're not, then we have a problem. But I think for these students, they really have to have their camera on, because otherwise there's just no way of knowing what they're doing and how much they're taking in. So I was glad to hear that feedback from, I don't remember who gave it in the group. I think there were several people who mentioned the camera issue. Another one, I don't think it was either of you guys, but the discipline side of things as well. I know one teacher commented about some disrespectful students. I'll give you guys a suggestion for this. Of course, we are going to tell them not to do it, of course, but if you have a student that is just out of control, disrespecting you or disrespecting the classmates, put them on a timeout. Send them to the weight room, make them chill there for a couple of minutes before you bring them back in and reset. I do this in my one-on-one classes and it works so well. Nothing scares a child like suddenly being kicked out of their classroom while their parents are sitting near them. Like, it works. So it should work for this as well. So if you do have a student that does either disrespect you or they're getting a little bit with their classmates, don't be hesitant to enforce the rules and do what you need to do around that. And of course, we did put the preparedness in here. Like I said, we can't go home with students and make sure that they do it, but we're setting that expectation with both the director and the parents that they need to be doing this. It could be that some students are assuming or some parents are assuming that everything's meant to happen in class. And that's not, of course, the case. So we're hoping by at least telling them this, that they can start doing it. And of course, the participation, because I know a few teachers gave some feedback on students being a little bit quieter and whatnot. So if there is anything you guys want added to this, I'll share it afterwards. Feel free to let me know and we can adjust if we need to. Okay, so I'm going to stop share for a moment. There are some other things I'll point out in a second, but let's go back to here. Okay, so I've got two kind of areas to talk about today. One is atmosphere and one is the difficulty. And the difficulty one will kind of address a little bit of what you were talking about as well, Taylor, in terms of the levels. But atmosphere first, we have gotten some feedback from students and parents that occasionally the classes are boring, which of course we don't want. And it can be very difficult. I say that laughing, but it can be very, very difficult, especially with some of these topics, to not make them because some of these are rather serious topics that we go on to talk about. But just a reminder to try to keep everything super positive, smiling, happy, all of that good stuff throughout your classes. One thing I want to point out around this as well, I know as ESL teachers, we are trained to go good job all the time, like to always praise. With these particular students, anytime you praise, feel free to throw in some challenges as well. So what we're kind of hearing from parents is, of course, like I said earlier, that they're feeling like some of this is too easy. And some of that's coming from the fact that the students are always getting praised no matter what they say. And this isn't necessarily directed at you guys because I haven't seen your classes. So I'm not directing it at anyone. So please don't think it's coming at you. You may very well not do this, but it's kind of like both training sessions are going to hear this. So try not to always be the cheerleader, which I'm really bad for, obviously. Legitimately cheerleading. So if you do praise, don't be shy about following up with a challenge. Like, it's kind of one of those underhanded compliments. Good job, but what do you think about this? And you don't always have to be a good job for everything. If they're meeting basic expectations, you can slyly praise them, but don't make a big deal of it. So moderate the praise a little bit and make sure you're also keeping that atmosphere of difficulty. That's kind of what we need in these classes. Because if the parents are sitting there and they're just constantly hearing good job, they're like, oh, my child's doing perfectly. They don't need to keep taking these classes. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And it's
room
hard.
for improvement.
Yeah. It's really hard to do though, because I know personally everything is amazing when an ESL student does it. Right? Like we're kind of trained automatically to encourage and praise and things like that. But these classes almost have to be a little bit different because we want the students to feel challenged and to feel like this is difficult, because it should be.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So a couple times I had students like not come, and so then it throws the balance of the teams off, and then the next time they're back and the next time they're not there. So then it's like I just try to like wing it and make it work so that this team, maybe they do both parts or something. Is that the right approach for that?
Yep, 100%.
So I'm like, what do you do? I mean,
I mentioned to Jack too, I'm having the same problem because I do the Century Bridge students, and it used to be that they always attended every week, never an issue. And then like the past 3 months, I don't think I've had a full debate class. Like someone's missing every week, and it is frustrating. So I share that with you. But no, 100%, that's the correct thing to do. So just adapt as best you can. What I'll typically do is just if someone's missing from the prep class, I'll just sort the teams as is. And if that person comes next week, they'll just kind of.
I usually put it in feedback, but then I don't know if they come,
Yeah. If they do come, what I sometimes will let them do, if they've missed the prep class and they're now coming in to join a team and they have no idea what's going on, I might send them back to the breakout rooms for 3 or 4 minutes and be like, catch your teammate up and give them a strict time limit. Like, you need to make sure your teammate's on board so you guys can win this debate. Depends on the group, but that usually works pretty well. Of course, if they're there for the prep but not the debate, then I pretty much do what you said and just have, okay, all right, Susie and John, your other teammate's not here. You guys have to pick up the slack. And because that can happen in real life, real debates. So yeah, just adapt as you can. Obviously, if you're missing too many students, it gets really difficult. I had 2 students show up to my Saturday class. So I had to laugh about that.
Oh my gosh.
This is a class that runs at 10 o'clock Taiwan time, so it's quite late. And yeah, it's often hard to try to reach out and get them to come because it is that late. Nobody's going to respond. So I literally had 2 students for about 40 minutes in that class before a 3rd student showed up.
Oh my god.
Wow. We just did a conversation class. I didn't attempt debate. I could have made them do a one-on-one, but
yeah, it's hard.
I just didn't bother. Wow. But yeah, if you are finding that you're continuously getting not enough students to make it productive, please let Jack know. Because again, that's something that he can address with the director and the parents. Because I mean, parents are paying for these classes, or the school is somewhere along the line, someone's paying for these classes. So they're going to want to know if the students are continuously not showing up.
So is there 2 different like sectors? Like, because I teach a writing class too, but I think it's the school, and then like some of it's Century Bridge, right? It's 2 different.
Kind of.
Then Japan's involved too, because I have some Japanese students too.
Japan is part of Century Bridge. So Century Bridge teaches students mostly from Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Japan. So you will get students from all 3.
Got it. Okay.
The group classes as well. There are group classes that are pretty much Century Bridge students. So students who have signed up through Century Bridge. And then we're also partnered with essentially a cram school in Hong Kong. So that's where the big influx of a lot of group classes came from very suddenly, is that partnership.
Yeah.
And that's where we're getting a lot of feedback from, because it is kind of a cram school. So they are used to being very, parents have these expectations, and therefore the school has these expectations, and then stuff runs downhill, to put it nicely. So yeah, but yeah, it kind of, I mean, it's all the same stuff. We all do it the same way. But I imagine like my debate classes look very similar to what you guys are doing. It's just different students. Okay, so that's that part. So a couple things around kind of going on to the difficulty part. In terms of students being at like crazy different difficulty levels, if you're finding that, I mean, you kind of can pick up on it in your very first class with a new group. Let us know as soon as possible. So just shoot a message to Jack and be like, look, X and Y are beginner students, and Z and A, they're super advanced. I think this group is going to be very difficult to learn. And he can see what he can do. Usually there's multiple debate classes starting at the same time, so it may be possible to kind of rejig some students or something. But it's also just important to know so that we can give feedback to the director and everything as well. So hopefully we can kind of start getting students in groups they belong in rather than making it really difficult for you guys. So never be scared to give us feedback. That's the way we make things better, is by hearing from you guys and of course hearing from the parents and the students too. But you guys have equally as much say in how things are running. So if something isn't working, don't be shy about telling us.
Okay.
Like if you just have a really awful group where nothing's happening, it's better for you to tell us like right away than for us to get to the end of the class and the parents are angry and the students are angry and everyone's just angry about the whole class. So because we're more likely to be able to do something early on than by the time we get to class 8.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, please don't feel free to let us know. In terms of the debate topics, I know there was a bit of feedback around the difficulty of topics. You guys should have seen, I'm sure you've seen this, I'm going to show you anyway, just so it's in the recording. So this has changed over the past probably, I guess this was August, 2 months maybe. So what we've done is kind of went through and started leveling our debate classes. Still a work in progress. I'm trying to update some of the older ones. But you should now see that there are ones for beginners, intermediate, and advanced. These are very rough levels. There's no like hard and fast rule. I mean, it's more based on topic and whatnot, like, you know, books or movies, that's pretty lower levels. That's a good starting topic versus something like, you know, artificial intelligence kind of goes on the other end of the spectrum. So when you have a new debate class and you're making your syllabus, what I suggest doing is, Jack usually will tell you something about your level. But in that first class, judge your students, like judge them hard, be very critical, and get a good idea of what they can actually do. And if you need to, adjust your syllabus beyond that. It's totally fine to do if you need to. Like if you've went through and put all advanced topics and you get through that first class and you're like, oh my gosh, please feel free to make some changes. There are plenty of topics in here. So you can always go down to intermediate or whatever you need to do. Just always make sure you're informing Jack, look, I need to update the syllabus because these topics aren't going to work for this group. And he can just, you know, pass it to who it needs to go to so students now know there's a change.
Okay.
So please feel free to adjust the level according to what you need to in your classes. You'll also see there's been a lot of topics added probably over the past couple of months as well that are even more tricky topics. Surrogacy, for example, climate change, artificial intelligence, GMOs. So we are starting to add some really tricky to navigate topics to the extent that we can. There's some things we really can't talk about with kids. But we have started adding some more that are a bit harder for the students. And let me pick one of these really quickly. If you do have a group that's finding it really easy and they're just not looking like they're being challenged, these kind of newer topics would be really good for them because it doesn't really give the pros and cons. So they really have to do a lot more work. It goes through what climate change is, like, for example, this one, what contributes, what are some efforts being done? But the question is it irreversible, right? So we haven't actually given them any of the yes or no arguments. So in these types of classes where we're going really advanced, we're not giving them that stuff. So feel free to have a look at these. You'll see that when they've been uploaded. So most of the ones from August, September, those are all very, very new, and usually they're kind of the tip top difficulty level. I don't know if you guys have that issue where your students aren't being challenged. I know Taylor, it doesn't sound like you've had that issue.
No, I even had to, because I was assigned an advanced class, and then I went to the first day of class and I was like, okay, this is not an advanced class. So then I had to like completely change everything. So my kids were definitely not at this level.
That's totally fine too. Yeah, if you go to that first class, like I said before, please change.
Yeah.
I'm saying this because I know I can't remember who said what in the group chat, because there are too many people in that chat. But someone did mention about their group not being challenged enough. So I did want to point that out, that there are some topics in here that are trickier issues, or at least as tricky as we can go with a group of kids or teenagers, and that do require them to do a lot more. But both of you guys, I don't think really have that problem.
No.
One of you can't get people to research, and one of you can't get your students on the same level. So I don't think that's a problem for you guys. But yes, just wanted to point that out for you. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. I have my little notes. You can always, with these topics too, I just wanted to say as well, with any of these, we do make them, for general use. We obviously can't adapt every curriculum to how every class can possibly be, but we know you guys are amazing teachers. So feel free to reword or adjust questions or things as you need to in these debates too. So if you read a question and it seems too simple, or you read a question that seems too hard, please feel free to reword, simplify, challenge more if you want, as you need to. Because we kind of we make these as a blanket thing that anyone can use. And, we could get two completely different groups using these. So just something I wanted to point out. So please feel free to, these aren't rigid. So if you need to make a change to adapt it to your class, please do. The other thing I'll point out, I have picked a random one. Sorry, Rachel. Rachel's not here, but I'm sure she'll see this. You guys have been filling these out for your classes, right? Yeah. I just wanted to point out as well, just to kind of help with the whole difficulty atmosphere vibe that parents get. Make sure you're quite thorough in filling these out. I'm not saying please don't spend like heaps of time on them. Like, you don't have to. Your time's valuable, but make sure that you're not just roses and rainbows. Be brutal, and I say that in the nicest way I could possibly say it. But be brutal with your students, and nitpick. This, it's not, I don't know if you guys worked for VIP Kid or one of those, but they were very roses in feedback. Great job, you did amazing. Nobody ever wanted to give negative. Do the opposite here. Feel free to give negative feedback and really tell the students and the parents, look, your child needs to work on X, Y, and Z if they want to improve. And to be honest, looks like Rachel does a pretty good argument. Does a pretty good job. She's pretty. But even down here, which it looks like she does do that. Make sure you actually give a little bit of support to what you say. Again, we're not asking you to spend heaps of time on this, but be realistic and honest in your feedback. Tell them what they need to work on. If they did do something fabulous, that's great too. But make sure you're trying to give them some things so that parents aren't just seeing, oh, they think my child is great. It must be too easy for them. So if parents see, look, my child's struggling in this, that's going to automatically help them think that it's more difficult without you having to do a lot to actually adjust the class. So just a little bit, I think most of the reports I've seen have been pretty good, but it's kind of just a blanket reminder. So again, I'm not calling either of you out, so please don't think I am. I just opened this one randomly. So Rachel's going to see this video and be like, oh, okay, I did good. Okay. I'm going to stop share again. And we are almost done. I said about 30 minutes. Almost there. I think that's most things. The only other thing I want to say, and Valentine, I think you mentioned this as well, that you're already doing this, but do try to give students, in terms of the difficulty stuff, give students very specific tasks, which it does sound like you've been doing already, and it can be hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
But you did mention it helps a little bit. Like if you give them those,
Yeah.
then they at least have something.
I make them find so many facts and then the question, and then when I go back into the breakout rooms, I have to hear it. So I mean,
It can be good,
Yeah.
depending on your group. But that also helps the difficulty level a little bit. Even for lower level students, you can give them simpler tasks if you need to. My groups, they're really awful with coming up with examples. They just think their argument is the answer and that's it. And I've had these guys for like a year, and it's just hard to like beat that idea out of them. Like, no, your argument's just not automatically correct because you say so. So like my task is always come up with support your argument, come up with something.
They don't like
Examples.
to find statistics,
No.
percentages.
So
Yep.
come up with little, it can be something that sounds super simple, but I want you to find a statistic to back up these arguments. I want you to give me some examples for these arguments. I also will encourage students to practice with each other. I don't know if you guys do that, but I mean, in the prep, that's a chance for them to be able to talk with their team and actually say their argument out loud for someone else to hear and give feedback on. So I try to also encourage, I don't know if my teams ever do it. I'm going to go with no, to be honest. But I do try to tell them, if you have more time at the end of prep, I want you to give your introduction. So whoever's giving the introduction, I want you to give it to your teammates and see what they think. It sounds good. I don't know if my teams ever do it, but it is a task that you can give them. So always try to give some of those specific tasks because one, it helps them stay on point to a degree. And it gives them something specific to work on. So they're not just going to the breakout rooms like with no idea what to do. And parents also hear it. They're like, okay, my students are learning how to do this, this, and this. So that helps too. Okay, I think that's most things I needed to cover. Do you guys have any questions, thoughts, anything you want to add, or anything we can do to help and support you guys more?
I don't think so. The support's good. I mean, it's really good. Yeah.
Taylor, were you saying the same thing? Okay.
Yeah, same thing. I have nothing specific. I find the organization and everything is great. It was just my students, it was an interesting group, but towards the end of class or like the class, it worked out really well. So
that's good.
Yeah, it is tricky sometimes with the group classes because it's often really hard to know when putting the groups together. We're told they're at this level. Reality often falls anywhere else on the spectrum. So it can be really tricky. So, like I said a few times, please feel free to give us feedback. Anything that's not going well in your groups, whether it's the levels or discipline or preparation, those are all three things you guys said. Well, not the discipline, but the other ones. Let us know sooner rather than later. So as soon as it happens or as soon as you notice it's a problem, hop into the group chat or message myself or Jack directly and say, look, not working, fix it, help me fix it. And we'll see what we can do to help out with the situation. Because again, if we get to class 8, then you guys are depressed, the students are depressed, the students aren't likely to come back, and then, everybody's unhappy, Jack's sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad because I gotta listen to Jack be sad. Just joking. Yeah, so please feel free to, you guys know Jack's like the nicest person in the world. So give him the feedback. He's never gonna be like angry at you for telling him something's not working. Okay, that's pretty much all I have. And doesn't sound like you guys have any questions, but you guys both know how to reach me. I know you've both private messaged me before. So if you do need anything, have questions, or you realize something after the fact, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for attending today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're awesome. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Hopefully this was a little bit helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Bye, Taylor. Nice to see you. Bye.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.